Hello gentle listeners, and welcome back to Whispers of the Past. In our last episode, we followed Arthur's journey from doubt to destiny as he claimed Excalibur and embraced the weight of kingship. But a kingdom is not built on swords alone. Today we witness the birth of Camelot, not just as a castle of stone, but as an ideal shaped by vision, honor, and fragile unity. How does one build a kingdom that will endure beyond battles and bloodlines? And what shadows lurk even as the light of Camelot rises? Join us as Arthur gathers his knights, forges the round table, and sows the seeds of both glory and tragedy. Chapter 1: Foundations of a Dream. The morning sun rose over the rolling hills of Britain, casting long, golden rays upon a landscape scarred by years of conflict. Amidst the echoes of past wars, Arthur stood at the heart of a vast clearing, envisioning not just walls and towers, but a sanctuary where justice would thrive. Camelot began as more than stone and mortar. It was born from Arthur's dreams and Merlin's wisdom. The construction was swift, driven by the hands of loyal men and the hearts of those who believed in a new era. Merlin advised with quiet words, guiding Arthur not just as a king, but as a leader forging a legacy. His counsel often came in the form of riddles and parables, challenging Arthur to think beyond the immediate and consider the legacy he would leave. But as Arthur watched Camelot rise, he could not shake the shadow of his father, Uther Pendragon. The mighty king had ruled through fear and force, his obsession with power shaping a kingdom fractured by war. In the end, it was not an enemy blade that struck Uther down, but the weight of his own deeds. Some whispered he died of sickness, others that the past finally caught up with him, leaving him to fade into the echoes of a kingdom he could never truly unite. Arthur had stood by his father's deathbed, watching the once great warrior fade. In that moment, Uther's grip on Arthur's arm had been strong, his voice hoarse but commanding. "Strength, boy. Never show weakness, or they will tear you apart." But Arthur had already chosen a different path, one where strength lay not in fear, but in unity. The truth of his lineage had been revealed to him long ago, a secret held by Merlin and few others. Arthur had spent years wrestling with what it meant to be Uther's son. Was he doomed to repeat his father's mistakes, to rule through conquest and fear? Or could he forge something greater? As he watched Camelot rise, he vowed that his father's reign would not define his own. As the towers of Camelot rose, Arthur walked among the labourers, his presence more than symbolic. He listened to their hopes and fears, learning the pulse of his people. This connection forged bonds deeper than loyalty born of conquest. It was loyalty born of shared vision. Yet, even as the walls took shape, Arthur felt the weight of unity's fragility. Rival lords watched with wary eyes, their alliances as brittle as the old oaths they had sworn to long-dead kings. Envoys arrived bearing words dipped in honey, but laden with threats, veiled in diplomacy. It was clear, to hold Britain together, Arthur needed more than a castle. He needed a brotherhood, a symbol that could inspire both the hearts of men and the loyalty of kings. In the evenings, Arthur and Merlin would stand atop the partially built ramparts, gazing out over the landscape. "A kingdom is more than its walls," Merlin would say softly. "It's the dreams that fill it, the people who believe in it, and the ideals that guide it. Build wisely, Arthur, for what you create here will echo through time." And so, with each stone laid, Camelot grew not just as a fortress, but as a beacon of hope, its foundations rooted in dreams, wisdom, and the fragile promise of unity. Chapter 2: The Gathering Storm. With Camelot rising as a beacon of hope, Arthur turned his attention to the uncertain lands beyond its borders. The kingdom had been born from war, and though Arthur sought peace, he knew that not all would embrace his vision so easily. The lords of Britain were divided. Some saw Arthur as the rightful heir, a king destined to bring order to the realm. Others saw only the son of Uther, a man whose rule had left scars that still bled. The alliances Arthur needed were fragile, and trust was a currency spent too easily, but earned with great difficulty. Merlin, ever watchful, sensed the unease in the air. "They do not fear you, Arthur. They fear what you might become," he warned one evening as they walked the castle's half-built walls. "Uther ruled with an iron hand, and though you are not him, the shadow he cast is long." Arthur nodded, his gaze fixed on the distant hills where the banners of rival lords flew. "Then we must show them that Camelot stands for something greater. Strength, not through fear, but through unity." To solidify his reign, Arthur called upon the most noble and skilled warriors in the land, those who shared his dream of a just kingdom. Some came willingly, drawn by the promise of a cause worth fighting for. Others arrived with skepticism, their swords at their sides, wary of the young king's ideals. Among them was Sir Gawain, fierce and unyielding, a knight whose loyalty would one day become legendary. Sir Percival, a giant of a man with a heart as pure as the blade he wielded. Sir Kay, Arthur's own foster brother, whose sharp tongue was matched only by his skill in battle, and Lancelot, the enigmatic warrior from across the sea, whose prowess and charisma made him both an invaluable ally and a man of many secrets. As the knights assembled, Arthur made his decree. There would be no throne towering above the rest, no ruler looking down upon his men. Instead, there would be a round table, an emblem of equality, where each knight held a voice, and each bore the weight of the kingdom's future. The table itself was crafted by skilled artisans, a marvel of design that reflected the ideals Arthur sought to uphold. Legends whispered that Merlin had guided its creation, ensuring that no man could claim a seat above another. Each place was inscribed with a name, a reminder that honor was not given, but earned through deeds. To sit at the round table was not merely a privilege, it was a sacred duty. This was not a mere gathering of warriors, it was the forging of a brotherhood. Through rigorous training and shared trials, the knights grew in strength and unity. They learned to fight not as individuals, but as a single force, each sword an extension of Camelot's will. Trust was forged in battle, and respect was won through hardship. As their bonds deepened, so too did their legend, spreading beyond Camelot's walls and inspiring those who had once doubted Arthur's rule. And so, with the Round Table formed and the greatest knights in the land sworn to its cause, Camelot took its first true steps towards legend. Yet, though Arthur had built a court unlike any other, challenges still lay ahead. The strength of a Round Table would soon be tested, and only time would tell if it could withstand the trials to come. Chapter 3: Shadows in the Light. As Camelot flourished and the Round Table solidified its place in legend, an unexpected arrival cast ripples through Arthur's court. Morgana, a woman of noble blood and unknown allegiances, stepped into the halls of Camelot, her presence both captivating and unsettling. She carried with her a quiet grace, but there was something in her gaze, something knowing, something unresolved. Arthur had known Morgana as the daughter of Glorus, the Duke of Cornwall, and the former ally of Uther Pendragon. Yet, whispers in the shadows spoke of deeper truths, secrets that had been buried beneath years of deception. The truth would soon come to light, and it would shake the very foundations of Camelot. It was Merlin who first sensed the weight Morgana carried. He had seen glimpses of her fate in his visions, shrouded in mist, standing at a crossroads between darkness and light. He watched her closely, wary yet intrigued. Merlin knew she was no ordinary noblewoman. She had been a ward of Uther for a long time, and he knew destiny had marked her for something far greater than even she understood. He knew the truth of her birth. He knew that Arthur and Morgana shared the same blood. The revelation came one fateful evening when Morgana, emboldened by the questions gnawing at her soul, confronted Arthur in the Great Hall. "We are bound by more than fate, Arthur," she said, her voice steady yet laced with emotion. "We share the same blood. Uther Pendragon was my father, as he was yours." Silence fell like a heavy curtain. Arthur, ever the king, remained still, his expression unreadable. Yet, beneath the armor of duty, something stirred. Shock, disbelief, and the echoes of a father's sins. The court murmured, and Merlin, standing at Arthur's side, felt the delicate balance of the kingdom shift. Arthur turned his gaze to Morgana, searching her eyes for falsehood, but finding only truth. Uther had never spoken of her, never acknowledged her as his own. Yet now, standing before him, she was undeniable. She was his sister. Arthur knew Morgana as they grew up together. He knew of Morgana to be Uther's ward, but never expected Morgana to be his own. What did this mean for Camelot? For the Round Table? The knights, ever loyal, awaited their king's response, uncertain of what this revelation would bring. Arthur drew a breath, his resolve unshaken. "If what you say is true, then I will not deny you as he did. You are of Camelot, Morgana. This is your home." Morgana lowered her gaze, and for a fleeting moment, the firelight in the hall softened her sharp edges. Yet, in the depths of her heart, conflict raged. Acceptance was not the same as trust, and trust was a fragile thing. Merlin watched Morgana as she retook her place in Camelot. She was no mere noblewoman, no simple half-sister to a king. She was something else entirely, something yet to be revealed. And as he gazed upon her, he could not shake the feeling that her path, and Arthur's, would one day lead to something more perilous than either could foresee. For now, she remained a daughter of Camelot, but in the days to come, she would be so much more. Chapter 4: The Code of Chivalry. As Camelot stood as a beacon of hope and unity, Arthur knew that power alone was not enough to sustain a kingdom. It was not the sword that would define Camelot's legacy, but the values upon which it was built. Thus, Arthur established the Code of Chivalry, a sacred oath that would bind the knights of the Round Table and serve as the moral compass of his realm. The code was not merely a set of rules, but a way of life. It demanded loyalty, honor, and justice from all who swore themselves to it. A knight of Camelot was expected to protect the weak, uphold the truth, and place duty above personal gain. No man, regardless of birth, was above these laws. It was a vision of fairness, where nobility was earned through actions, not inheritance. Arthur himself was the first to take the oath, standing before his knights in the Great Hall. "We are more than warriors," he declared. "We are guardians of a dream of a kingdom where might serves right, where justice prevails over cruelty, and where all men stand equal in worth. This is our charge. This is Camelot." The oath became the foundation upon which his knights built their legacy. It bound them to a higher calling, shaping them into more than mere soldiers. Lancelot, Gawain, Percival, and the others each embraced the code, swearing their lives to uphold the virtues Arthur had set forth. But the code of chivalry was not without its challenges. It demanded sacrifice, often forcing knights to make choices between duty and desire, justice and loyalty. When Lancelot found himself torn between his devotion to Arthur and his love for Guinevere, it was the code that weighed upon him, reminding him of his sworn honour. When Gawain sought vengeance for a fallen brother, it was the code that stayed his hand, teaching him that justice must not be driven by wrath. The impact of Arthur's vision extended beyond the Round Table. It reached the people of Camelot, inspiring them to believe in something greater. Merchants, farmers, and craftsmen found protection under the laws of the chivalric order, no longer living in fear of tyranny. Even those beyond Camelot's walls spoke of the fairness of Arthur's reign, drawing knights from distant lands who wished to serve under his banner. Yet, for all its ideals, the code of chivalry was not unbreakable. Not all who took the oath remained true to it, and betrayal would one day seep into the very heart of Camelot. But for now, it stood strong, shaping the greatest age the kingdom had ever known. Arthur had forged more than a kingdom. He had built a legend, and as long as the code endured, so too would the dream of Camelot. Chapter 5: Whispers of Dissent. As Camelot flourished, its grandeur was not met with universal praise. Beyond the golden vision of Arthur's kingdom, there were those who looked upon his role with suspicion, resentment, or outright defiance. The dream of a just and noble land where all men stood equal in worth was not welcomed by everyone. The nobility, accustomed to ruling through privilege rather than merit, whispered in darkened halls. They saw Arthur's ideals as a threat to the old ways, where lineage dictated power, and knights were beholden to lords, not to honour. Some chafed at the thought of common-born men rising to knighthood, believing the Round Table eroded their authority. Though they bent the knee in public, in private they murmured among themselves, seeking ways to reclaim their former dominance. Some sought alliances with those outside Camelot's walls, looking for an opportunity to undo the young king's reforms and restore their waning power. Beyond Camelot's walls, warlords and petty kings saw Arthur as a meddler who imposed his laws upon lands not his own. The idea of a unified realm under a single code threatened the rule they held over their domains, where might had always made right. They resented the encroachment of Arthur's vision, viewing his knights not as champions of justice, but as enforcers of an unwanted order. Some gathered armies in secret, forging uneasy pacts with those who shared their disdain for the High King's rule. Bands of outlaws, remnants of old conflicts, found new purpose in resisting the king who sought to change the world. Some of these outlaws had once been noble warriors themselves, disillusioned by Arthur's relentless pursuit of peace at the cost of their own autonomy. Even among his own ranks, doubt festered. There were knights who questioned whether the code of chivalry was realistic in a world where treachery was often rewarded and mercy could be mistaken for weakness. They saw enemies gather beyond Camelot's borders and wondered if justice alone was enough to keep the kingdom safe. Others struggled with personal conflicts, sworn to ideals they believed in, but torn between duty and ambition. Would honor hold when faced with temptation? Would loyalty endure when tested by war? Some knights, still tied to the traditions of their ancestors, found themselves wavering in their commitment to Arthur's cause, torn between loyalty to their king and the old loyalties that still whispered in their hearts. The whispers did not go unheard. Arthur, ever vigilant, sensed the undercurrents of unrest. But He believed that the strength of Camelot lay not in silent dissent, but in proving its ideals true. He knew that the greatest threat to his vision was not the sword of an enemy, but the erosion of belief from within. He sought to temper the doubts with action, sending his knights on quests, not only of conquest, but of justice, seeking to show, through deed, that Camelot's ideals were not merely words. For now, the Round Table stood firm, the knights bound by their oath, but in the shadows, forces gathered, waiting for the moment when Camelot's dream would falter, and when the whispers would turn to war. And as Arthur built his shining kingdom, he could not ignore the truth that all great empires face. No dream is without its enemies, and no peace is eternal. As the sun set over Camelot, Arthur stood upon the castle's highest tower, gazing over the city that had grown under his rule. The golden banners of his kingdom fluttered in the evening breeze, a symbol of the peace he had fought to create. Yet, in the quiet of the night, doubts crept into his mind. He had built Camelot upon the foundation of justice and unity, but shadows had begun to form at its edges. Merlin joined him, his presence unspoken, but understood. The young king glanced at his friend, seeking reassurance. "Do you believe the dream will last, Merlin?" Arthur asked. The sorcerer did not answer immediately. Instead, he looked towards the distant horizon, where storm clouds gathered in the fading light. "Dreams are powerful things," Merlin said at last. "But even the brightest dream must face the darkness." Far beyond the walls of Camelot, unseen forces moved. Whispers turned to plans, alliances were forged in secrecy, and those who had long watched from the shadows prepared to step into the light. Among them, one presence loomed above the rest, a presence bound by blood and destiny. Morgana's time was coming. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the rise of Camelot and the legendary Round Table. Arthur's dream of a just and noble kingdom has taken root, but as we've seen, not all welcome his vision. Whispers of dissent grew louder, and unseen threats lurk in the shadows. What challenges will Arthur face next? And what role will Morgana play in the fate of Camelot? Be sure to tune in for the next episode, where we dive deeper into the mysterious and powerful Morgana, her past, her magic, and the destiny that ties her to Arthur. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review, or send your thoughts to whispersofthepastreviews@gmail.com. Be sure to share the podcast with your fellow history and mythology lovers, and make sure you send me your thoughts. See you next time.